Let's talk about CarMax though here this morning. Shares of CarMax, halting or hitting the brakes. They are down following its latest quarterly results. The used car retailer reporting a massive miss on earnings as car sales slide and expenses rise here. And there's a lot to break down within CarMax's results. We're seeing
7 million CarMax cars are sitting unsold right now. 7 million cars. And that's just one company. This is proof that everyone is broke in 2026. Picture this. Massive parking lots stretching for miles. Brand new vehicles collecting dust. Dealerships desperate to move inventory. But here's what they're not telling you. This isn't just about cars anymore. Something happened between 2024 and now that changed everything. The average American went from car shopping to barely surviving. Credit scores are tanking. Loan rejections are through the roof. And the scariest part? The people running these companies saw this coming months ago, but stayed silent. While you were going about your life, a financial earthquake was building beneath your feet. So here's the real question. If nobody can afford a $30,000 car anymore, what else can't they afford? And how long before your paycheck stops covering the basics too? CarMax's latest filings paint a very different picture than the headlines suggest. As of the first quarter of fiscal 2026, CarMax held $3.62 billion in used vehicle inventory, roughly 230,210 units, waiting on lots across the country. That's up 9% from the year before, and far from the fantasy of 7 million unsold cars. Still, the scale is hard to ignore. Company reports show employees shuffling cars just to make room for more arrivals, with some lots so packed that test drives require moving a half-dozen vehicles out of the way. The real pressure comes from how quickly these cars turn into cash. In normal years, CarMax's inventory flows smoothly. Buy from consumers, recondition, sell, repeat. But 2026 brought a different rhythm. Purchases surged. 336,000 vehicles acquired in the first quarter alone, most from individual sellers. Yet retail sales, while up 9% year over year in that same quarter, couldn't keep pace with the inflow. By the third quarter, the tide turned. Retail used unit sales dropped 8%, net earnings were cut in half, and the company scrambled to adjust prices and ramp up marketing. On paper, profits per vehicle actually hit record highs, over $2,200 per car, thanks to high sticker prices and relentless cost controls. But those numbers mask a deeper strain. Flooring costs, the interest dealers pay to keep cars on the lot, are now eating into margins as days on lot creep higher. Dealers across the nation describe lines of unsold inventory not seen since the recession of 2008 and 2009. CarMax's CEO, Bill Nash, has avoided bold predictions, but the numbers speak for themselves. The company's share repurchase program, $199.8 million spent in the first quarter, signals confidence. Yet, investors remain wary. Even as the company moves more of its business online, the core challenge remains. Too many cars, not enough buyers. CarMax's own data makes clear that the problem isn't just about sales tactics or digital platforms. It's about affordability, credit, and the growing gap between what's parked on the lot and what Americans can actually drive home. Across the country, dealer lots now look more like storage yards than showrooms. The numbers tell the story. In January 2026, U.S. new car inventory stood at 3.2 million units, enough to last 92 days at current sales rates. Used car lots held another 2.4 million vehicles, representing a 55-day supply. These are the highest levels seen since the financial crisis nearly 2 decades ago. Rows of unsold 2024 and 2025 models stretch from city edges to rural highways, with trucks, SUVs, and electric vehicles sitting side by side, waiting for buyers who never arrive. This isn't just about one company. The saturation is everywhere, from national chains to independent dealers, from the Midwest to the coasts. Industry data shows that even the most popular models, like the Ford F-150 and Toyota Tacoma, are lingering on lots for months, some for half a year or more. Electric vehicles, once the darlings of dealership marketing, now average more than 500 days before they're sold. Dealers are caught in a bind. They bought aggressively during the supply shortages of 2021 and 2022, expecting demand to keep rising. But sticker prices climbed 42% since 2019, and monthly payments surged past $600. Now, with interest rates high and wages stagnant, buyers are backing away. Inventory keeps piling up, and every extra day a car sits unsold means higher flooring costs, the interest dealers pay just to keep vehicles on the property. These pressures ripple through the entire market. Trade-in values are dropping, and dealers are slashing offers to avoid adding even more to their swelling lots. The once steady rhythm of buy, recondition, and sell has turned into a waiting game, with vehicles aging in place. The glut isn't limited to used cars or new models. It's both, side by side, reflecting a broader freeze in consumer spending. In this environment, CarMax's struggle is just one chapter in a much larger story. The surplus isn't a fluke or a single company misstep. It's a symptom of a market where supply keeps growing, but demand has hit a wall. CarMax's official statements strike a careful tone, but there's no public panic in the boardroom. In quarterly calls, executives point to the company's ability to squeeze more profit from every sale, over $2,200 per vehicle, a figure that would have seemed impossible just a few years back. They highlight the company's stable digital platform and renewed focus on operational efficiency. The message is clear. CarMax is adapting, not retreating. Even as inventory climbs and retail sales slow, leadership leans on the narrative of resilience. Share buybacks, nearly $200 million spent in the first quarter, are held up as proof of faith in the company's future. Yet the optimism feels thin compared to the reality on the ground. Dealers and employees see the day-to-day strain. Lots jammed with unsold cars, buyers hesitating, and the cost of holding inventory rising with every passing week. While the press releases focus on record per-unit profits and digital growth, those numbers can't hide the pressure that comes with swelling inventory and shrinking demand. Investors, too, are watching closely. The company's stock price has lagged behind the broader market, even as profit margins reach new highs. There's a growing sense that the story told in earnings calls doesn't quite match the day-to-day experience of those working the lots or searching for buyers. Behind the confidence, questions linger. How long can high margins last if cars continue to stack up? What happens if buyers pull back even further, or if financing becomes even harder to secure? The gap between executive optimism and the realities faced by customers and employees is widening, and the tension is starting to show. The numbers may look strong on paper, but the human side, anxious staff, frustrated buyers, and cautious investors, paints a much more complicated picture. Alarm bells started ringing in the auto finance world long before CarMax's lots began to overflow. By the end of 2025, auto loan delinquencies had climbed to levels not seen since the aftermath of the Great Recession. The numbers are stark. More than 5% of all auto loans were at least 90 days past due. But underneath that headline, the pain runs deeper. For subprime borrowers, those with credit scores below 620, delinquency rates exploded to 15.78%. That means nearly 1 in 6 subprime car owners fell behind on payments, a record high since tracking began at the turn of the century. Industry analysts like Maria Marini warned that the surge wasn't just a blip. We are seeing the highest level of carryover units since the 2008 to 2009 recession. The numbers don't lie, she said in a January 2026 interview. Marini's words echoed across dealer networks as lenders tightened standards and repossessions spiked. The domino effect was hard to ignore. As more buyers missed payments, lenders grew wary, and access to credit shrank. Even those with steady jobs found themselves facing loan rejections or stricter terms. For many, the dream of a new or even late-model used car slipped further out of reach. The financial stress didn't stop at the subprime tier. Low and moderate income neighborhoods saw delinquency rates jump by 70 and 25 basis points, respectively, in just one quarter. Recent auto loans, especially those written in the pandemic's wake, were defaulting at higher rates than older, more conservative vintages. Refinancing offered a brief lifeline, with over 121,000 deals in the third quarter alone, but it only stretched the pain across more months and higher balances. The result? A growing pool of drivers owing more than their cars are worth, unable to trade in, and stuck in a cycle of negative equity. Behind every statistic is a household forced to make impossible choices. As monthly payments surged past $600 and interest rates climbed, car ownership became a source of anxiety rather than pride. The warning lights weren't just blinking, they were blazing red, signaling a market under real and immediate stress. A new reality has settled over American car buyers. If you want to drive something newer than a decade old, you're going to pay for it, one way or another. The sticker shock is only the beginning. Lenders, faced with buyers stretched to the limit, have quietly rewritten the rules. The standard 5-year car loan is now the exception, not the norm. By late 2025, the average auto loan term hit 90.57 months. That's 7.5 years of payments. For many, it's the only way to keep monthly costs under control as prices hover near all-time highs. But the relief is an illusion. The longer the term, the more interest piles up. And interest rates aren't just creeping, they're leaping. Subprime buyers, with credit scores under 620, are now seeing annual percentage rates as high as 22%. On a $26,000 used car, that means payments exceeding $600 a month, with thousands extra paid in interest over the life of the loan. Refinancing, once a rare move, has become a lifeline. More than 121,000 drivers refinanced in the third quarter of 2025, chasing a lower rate or a few dollars off the monthly bill. But the trade-off is clear. Those new loans stretch out even longer, locking borrowers into years of payments on cars that lose value with every mile. Negative equity is now the rule, not the exception. People owe more than their vehicles are worth, trapped in loans they can't escape. Trade-ins have become nearly impossible for anyone who bought in the past 5 years. Dealers won't touch cars unless the owner brings cash to cover the shortfall. The result is a market full of drivers stuck in place, unable to upgrade, downsize, or even walk away without wrecking their credit. And as the average term climbs past 7 years, the chance of ever breaking even shrinks with every payment. The numbers may look manageable on paper, but the cost is quietly compounding, setting up a wave of pain that's only just beginning to break. Loan desks across the country have turned into dead ends. By October 2025, the auto loan denial rate hit 15.2%, more than double what it was just 4 months earlier. For every 6 people who walked into a dealership hoping to drive away, 1 left empty-handed, turned down flat. Even buyers with steady jobs and decent credit found themselves on the wrong side of the approval line. The message from lenders was blunt: too risky, too stretched, too much debt already on the books. As approvals dried up, the repo trucks rolled in. Repossessions surged to between 2.5 million and 2.7 million vehicles in 2025, the highest level in years. Every day, more cars were yanked from driveways and parking lots, some just months after purchase. These weren't just subprime borrowers missing payments. Middle-class families, gig workers, Even small business owners felt the squeeze as budgets buckled under $600, plus monthly payments and interest rates that reached 22% for some buyers. The repo surge didn't just empty garages, it flooded dealer lots with used inventory, often in rough shape and worth less than what was owed. Dealers scrambled to make sense of it all. Trade-ins lost value overnight. Offers dropped, sometimes by thousands, as lots filled with repossessed vehicles nobody really wanted. The old rhythm, trade in, upgrade, drive off, broke down. Now, cars circled back through the system, each one a reminder of a deal gone bad. The average new car price had climbed 42% since 2019, putting even modest models out of reach for most households. Buyers who did get approved faced 7 or 8 year loans, locking them into payments that outlasted the value of the car itself. Maria Marini summed it up in a late 2025 interview. Inventory isn't just piling up because dealers miscalculated. It's because people can't buy, and when they do, too many can't keep up. The feedback loop is relentless. Denials force more cars back to the market, repos add to the glut, and the swelling surplus makes it harder for anyone to escape the cycle. As the lots overflow, the sense of normalcy in the car business is gone, replaced by a growing fear that this time, the buyers may not come back. January 19th, 2026. The Mediterranean churned with a violence not seen in years. Cyclone Harry, a compact but explosive low-pressure system, spun up over the Ionian Sea and barreled towards southern Italy and Malta. By midnight, red weather warnings blanketed the region. In the Sicilian Channel, a government buoy recorded a wave cresting over 16 meters, taller than a 5-story building. Along the coast, hurricane-force winds screamed past 130 kilometers per hour, tearing at rooftops and battering seawalls that had stood for generations. In Malta, the storm arrived as a wall of water and wind. Gusts topped 100 kilometers per hour, snapping power lines and tossing small boats from harbors onto city streets. The rain came in sheets, flooding Marsa Scala and Marsaxlokk in minutes. Bulldozers worked through the night, clearing debris as emergency calls poured in by the hundreds. At the same hour, Sicilian towns like Marzamemi and San Giovanni Licuti watched the sea climb over promenades, swallowing beaches and flooding historic piazzas. By dawn, ports across Sicily and Sardinia had been battered into silence. Yachts washed ashore in Birzabuga, Malta. Ferries and cargo ships rode out the chaos, stranded at sea or forced to anchor far from land. In Catania, rogue surges breached the waterfront, scattering fishing boats and flooding businesses. Roads vanished under mud and seawater, isolating entire communities. Landslides cut off hillside villages, while the relentless rain triggered flash floods that carried away cars and left scars across the countryside. The storm's power was raw and unyielding. Coastal defenses, designed for the storms of the past, stood little chance against the new reality. As Harry spun away, it left behind a coastline changed in a single night, broken infrastructure, battered towns, and a sense that the rules of weather had shifted for good. Sheets of rain hammered Sicily as Cyclone Harry pressed inland, turning familiar streets into rivers and cutting off entire neighborhoods within hours. The official tally would later show nearly 300 millimeters of rain in just 2 days, enough water to drown fields, flood basements, and send mud pouring through the doors of homes that had stood for generations. Sirens echoed through Catania and Palermo, each one tracing a new emergency. A stranded family, a collapsed road, a landslide swallowing a hillside farm. By the time dawn broke, the scale of the disaster was clear. Over 1,650 emergency interventions were logged in the first 3 days, with almost 1,000 of those calls coming from Sicily alone. Nearly 1,480 firefighters, many pulled from distant provinces, worked in shifts without rest, hauling sandbags, clearing debris from ancient piazzas, and rescuing people trapped in flooded apartments. Comandante Bianchi, leading one of the hardest-hit districts, described the night as a battle on every street. Every hour brought a new crisis: families on rooftops, power lines down, roads gone. We did what we could, but the water kept coming. For those living along the coast, the storm was more than just water. It was a wall, 8 meters high in places, smashing through seawalls and carrying fishing boats into town squares. In Mazzara del Valle, waves crashed over the promenade, dragging benches and lampposts out to sea. The Santa Teresa de Riva walkway, a favorite for evening strolls, vanished beneath the surge. Residents watched as the landmarks of their daily lives were swept away in a matter of hours. The numbers only hint at the chaos. Behind every intervention, there was a family huddled in darkness, a business owner watching a lifetime's work slip beneath the flood, a firefighter knee-deep in freezing water, refusing to quit. As the rain eased, the struggle shifted from survival to reckoning with what had been lost and what it would take to recover. Sicily became the epicenter of the emergency as Cyclone Harry battered the island from all sides. Nearly 1,000 separate rescue operations unfolded in just 3 days, each one a scramble against rising water and collapsing roads. Firefighters, almost 1,500 strong, worked through exhaustion, some coming from as far as Milan and Naples to reinforce local crews. In Palermo, teams navigated flooded alleyways by inflatable raft, while in Catania, others dug through mudslides searching for missing residents. The pace was relentless. Every hour, new calls for help poured in: stranded families, blocked ambulances, power outages stretching across neighborhoods. The Italian Coast Guard launched a coordinated response on an unprecedented scale. Over 100 naval and air assets, patrol boats, helicopters, surveillance planes were deployed to monitor the battered coastline and assess the damage. 450 personnel worked around the clock, scanning for pollution slicks and checking for vessels torn loose by the storm. Offshore, they tracked drifting debris fields and coordinated with port authorities to prevent further accidents. The threat wasn't just to infrastructure, but to the sea itself: oil spills from damaged marinas, fishing boats sunk or missing, and the risk of hazardous cargo leaking into fragile waters. Comandante Bianchi, overseeing the hardest-hit Sicilian districts, described the operation as a race against time. "We had to secure the ports, protect the people, and keep the sea safe, all at once," he said. As the rain eased and the winds died down, the scale of the devastation came into focus. Coastal promenades had vanished. Fishing fleets were scattered and battered. The cost, economic and environmental, would take months to tally. But for those on the front lines, the priority was clear: save what could be saved, and brace for the long road to recovery. The cleanup began before the storm clouds even cleared. Local officials and insurance assessors fanned out across Sicily, Sardinia, and Calabria, notebooks in hand, tallying what Cyclone Harry had left behind. The first numbers were staggering: over €1 billion in property and infrastructure losses, a figure that would only climb as the days went on. Sicily alone reported at least €740 million in damage: roads buckled, seawalls torn apart, entire promenades erased by the waves. For many towns, the cost wasn't just measured in broken concrete or flooded homes, but in the loss of future income as businesses shuttered and tourists canceled plans. Sardinia's bill ran into the hundreds of millions, with battered ports and collapsed coastal roads cutting off communities from the rest of the island. In Mazzara del Valle, the fishing fleet, already struggling, counted dozens of boats lost or destroyed. The Santa Teresa de Riva promenade, once a draw for locals and visitors, had vanished beneath the surge, leaving only twisted railings and scattered debris. These weren't just isolated incidents. Across southern Italy, the storm's path cut through the heart of the region's economy. Ports that handled millions of euros in daily trade sat idle, warehouses flooded, and supply chains ground to a halt. Each euro lost on paper meant a job at risk, a business on the brink, or a family facing months without income. As officials worked to reopen roads and restore power, the true weight of the disaster settled in, not just as a line item in a budget, but as a daily reality for thousands. The financial toll wasn't just a headline, it was a reckoning, measured in shattered routines and uncertain futures. Malta's main airport ground to a halt as Cyclone Harry battered the central Mediterranean. Pilots struggled to land in gale-force crosswinds, forcing 4 Ryanair flights originating from Bucharest, Vilnius, Trieste, and Milan to divert mid-air. Arrivals circled, then turned back, leaving hundreds of travelers stranded and cargo shipments delayed for days. On the ground, ferry terminals stood silent. All sailings between Malta and Sicily were suspended, including the busy Virtue Ferries catamaran, isolating Malta from the European mainland. In Sardinia, passenger and freight ferries to the smaller islands were cancelled, cutting off vital links for food, medicine, and emergency supplies. Ports from Catania to Mazara del Vallo remained closed or barely operational. Yachts and fishing boats, torn from their moorings, blocked harbor entrances. Container ships waited offshore, unable to unload. Malta Freeport, a key transshipment hub, stopped operations entirely on Sunday night, sending a ripple through supply chains that reach far beyond the Mediterranean. Even cruise ships weren't spared. Silversea's Silver Muse spent the night anchored in Valletta, skipping scheduled stops in Tunis and Cagliari as conditions worsened. With every cancelled flight and suspended ferry, the region's economic arteries seized up. Fresh produce, destined for Northern Europe, spoiled in warehouses. Medical shipments sat in limbo. Coastal communities, already battered by wind and rain, now faced isolation, no way in, no way out. For island states like Malta, the storm was a blunt reminder of their dependence on fragile transport links. The disruption stretched from local markets to international trade routes, exposing just how quickly a single weather system can paralyze a region built on connectivity. Mediterranean waters are running hotter than ever recorded, and the consequences are no longer theoretical. As Cyclone Harry battered the coastlines, Professor Stavrou of the University of Malta described the storm as a direct response to a sea that is nearly 2 degrees above its 20th century average. Warmer water doesn't just feed bigger waves, it supercharges storms, loading the air with moisture that crashes down as record rainfall. The science is clear. Every fraction of a degree turns ordinary weather into something far more destructive. But the damage isn't limited to the coastline. As governments scramble to repair shattered roads and flooded ports, the cost of these disasters is beginning to overwhelm public budgets. Sicily's estimated 740 million euros in losses is only the start. Once lost business and infrastructure repairs are tallied, the final bill will climb much higher. Sardinia faces hundreds of millions more. Emergency funds, once reserved for rare events, are now tapped year after year. Insurance companies raise premiums, local councils delay other projects, and national governments are forced to borrow just to cover cleanup and recovery. Professor Stavrou warns that the feedback loop is accelerating. Warmer seas create stronger storms, which inflict heavier damage, which in turn drains the resources needed to adapt. The pattern repeats, each cycle leaving communities more exposed and governments less able to respond. In Brussels, policymakers debate how to share the burden as weather disasters cross borders and ripple through supply chains. What was once a local problem now strains the entire region. The numbers, sea temperatures, rainfall, budget deficits are all moving in the same direction. The challenge isn't just rebuilding after the storm. It's finding a way to break the cycle before the next one hits. False numbers spread faster than facts, and in a world hungry for panic, rumor outpaces reality. Today, auto loan delinquencies hit record highs, but the collapse some predict hasn't arrived. What's real is the pressure. Wages lag, essentials cost more, and trust in economic stability erodes. If hype can trigger fear this easily, what happens when the next crisis is real? Share your thoughts below. What do you see changing around you?